Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Moscow supports the US proposal for a ceasefire in Ukraine in principle, but fighting can't be paused until certain conditions were worked out. Hamas says it is ready to free an Israeli-American hostage and the remains of 4 other dual nationals after the group sat down for indirect talks with Israel on Gaza's ceasefire. At least 4 Tesla cars set on fire in Berlin in the latest attack on the brand after its owner Elon Musk backed the far-right AfD in recent German elections. In strong rhetoric, Taiwan leader Lai Ching-te labels China as a foreign hostile force and vows tough measures against Beijing amid worsening cross-strait ties. And gold surpassed $3,000 for the first time today as investors flocked to the asset seen as a safe haven amid the uncertainty over US President Donald Trump's tariffs. Hello and welcome. We begin with updates on the fighting in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Southern African leaders have announced that they are pulling their troops out from the war-torn region in the DRC as Rwanda-backed M23 rebels continue to advance. Now, Southern African countries sent their troops 2 years ago and they had been helping the government fight the rebel forces. At least 19 soldiers from South Africa, Malawi, Tanzania were killed when the M23 captured the region's biggest city, Goma, in January.
This extraordinary SADC summit has made the bold decision to withdraw our mission from the Eastern DRC. The withdrawal of some DRC notwithstanding, our august regional body will remain seized with the political and security situation in Eastern DRC. We must speed up the implementation of the decisions made during the joint SADC EAC meeting. These include the merger of the Rwanda and Nairobi peace processes. More so, that dialogue is a key cog to usher lasting peace to the people of DRC. As our mission enters a withdrawal phase, we appeal for continued support to facilitate the safe withdrawal of all our troops and evacuation of our equipment.
The decision to begin a phased withdrawal of forces from the DRC was made during a summit of the Southern African Development Community, or SADC, in Harare on Tuesday. Now, this was SADC's third emergency summit on the DRC in recent months. SADC did not give a reason for its decision to pull out troops, but has called for a diplomatic and political solution to the conflict. Experts say the withdrawal is a major blow to the Southern African bloc that has gone from being on Kinshasa's side to being at best in a neutral position. In the latest, 20 Burundian troops have been killed and 10 others were injured in fighting with the M23 rebels. Reports say M23 rebels, backed by the Rwandan forces, launched attack on positions where the Burundian troops were stationed, and the fighting went on for 2 days. Earlier this week, Angola said it would host talks in a bid to halt the fighting. Now, Luanda said that direct negotiations between the DRC and the M23 would begin on the 18th of March. Now, the Rwanda-backed armed group has cautiously welcomed the prospect of direct negotiations, but also raised concerns, urging DRC President Felix Tshisekedi to publicly express his commitment to direct negotiations as an absolute necessity. President Tshisekedi had previously refused to engage in direct dialogue with the M23, which he has repeatedly branded as a terrorist group. He is yet to comment on Angola's latest proposal for talks on the 18th of March. Both Tshisekedi and Rwanda's President Paul Kagame have been negotiation no-shows on previous occasions. Now, the potential peace talks with Rwanda-backed M23 has drawn mixed responses from people in the DRC. Those in the capital, Kinshasa, expressed opposition to negotiating with the M23, while those in Bukavu, located in the conflict-affected area of the eastern region, saw the potential for peace through dialogue.
These people killed our brothers, raped our sisters, and did everything they could to subdue us. Now Angola demands that we negotiate with M23. And if we agree to negotiate with M23, we will remain slaves of Rwanda and M23 never. They want to keep us in their shadow. Here in Kinshasa, we say no to the idea of dialogue with M23. If they want to negotiate, let them start by negotiating with the dead they caused. This is what we deplore. We shouldn't wait until there are many deaths, because you know yourself, in Bukavu's life, it's always the same. We constantly deplore insecurity, even in North Kivu. The government should really be flexible and ready to dialogue with those who hold weapons, who have demands, and examine them to find a solution so that the population can breathe.
Several rounds of talks between the DRC and Rwanda produced a series of ceasefires and truces, but that has had little effect on the fighting. Over 7,000 people have been killed during the fighting, and hundreds of thousands have fled their homes. Concerns over the fighting escalating into a wider regional conflict are growing rapidly. Now, to discuss more on this, we have with us Stephen Buchanan-Clark, who is the head of Peace and Security Program at Good Governance Africa, joining us live from Cape Town, South Africa. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Alison.
Now, what are the key reasons behind SADC's decision to withdraw its troops from the eastern DRC? And what does this mean now for the security situation in the region?
Well, the SADC mission in the DRC was in a very precarious and difficult position since the M23 sort of rapid advance on Saki and in Goma 2 months ago. Our troops had essentially been confined to their bases there, unable to leave. They have experienced a lot of hardship with M23 rebels surrounding the bases, not allowing in medical access to troops that had been injured. I think this is probably the best situation, a phased drawdown approach. It will allow the South African government and the Tanzania Malawians to bring back their equipment slowly. It will be a long and a costly process, but in the end, it has given time, I think, for enhancement of the dialogue process that is hopefully beginning next week in Rwanda. But simply put, I think our troops were basically outmatched in the Kivus. And although all the reports indicate that they fought very bravely and were willing to fight, unfortunately, capacity constraints, I think, around equipment and particularly air support was a limiting factor that had a negative effect on our efficacy as a mission there.
Right. And with the M23 rebels continuing to make territorial gains, how does this withdrawal impact the Congolese government's ability to contain the insurgency? And what alternative security measures could be considered?
Well, since 2 months ago, since the beginning of the new rapid offensive by M23 and the surrounding of our troops in the Kivus, Tshisekedi has approached other potential partners trying to look for security assistance. We know he approached the Chaldeans. There was discussion with France and Qatar, and he's also made overtures towards the US, I think, looking for a minerals for security deal along the lines of the current Ukraine model being pushed. However, it's not clear if any of those have delivered any results for the president. So I think dialogue seems like the only real option, particularly given the fact that the DRC troops have not been able to stand up to M23, backed by Rwanda, of course. Lots of reports of deserters and just being outmatched militarily on the ground.
Right. And finally, given the accusations against Rwanda for their alleged support of the M23 and the ongoing tensions with the DRC, how might this withdrawal and its consequences then affect the regional stability and diplomatic relations between SADC member states and Rwanda?
Yeah, well, this is a blow to SADC. There's no really way of two ways about that. Essentially, it has exposed some of our capacity issues, military capacity issues, in the face of M23 and Rwandan forces. But next week we have an announcement from President Lourenco that next week dialogue will start directly between Tshisekedi and the M23. We still haven't heard it clearly if he will be attending those talks or DRC government will attend. But in the SADC's communique about the termination of the mission, they did express strong emphasis on the need for dialogue between all parties. So that includes state and non-state actors. So SADC is pushing for Tshisekedi to directly engage M23 because it seems clear that dialogue is the only real option at this stage to preventing potentially M23 continuing south, which is not something that, of course, Angola wants or SADC as a whole, towards the Katanga region. And Tshisekedi at the moment doesn't seem to have many cards he can play, given the lack of security support facing him.
Stephen, thank you very much. As always, great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Alice.
Moving to the Central African country of Angola, where the government has denied entry to several opposition leaders from across Africa and other regions. Now, these opposition and former African leaders were invited by the National Union for Total Independence of Angola, or UNITA. The UNITA is the opposition party and currently the country's second largest party. According to reports, the leaders were being called to attend a 2-day democracy conference in the capital of Luanda. Now, Tanzania's opposition chief, Tundu Lissu, and Mozambique's opposition leader, Venancio Mondlane, were also among those invited. Now, Lissu confirmed through his social media, though he was denied entry to Angolan territory. He stated that the country had violated his rights, as he didn't need a visa for the same. Lissu added that a delegation of over 20 leaders was stopped by Angolan immigration authorities. Another high-profile figure who was reportedly denied entry was the former Colombian president, Andres Pastrana. He also expressed rage on his X account. Pastrana said that he was also detained at the airport. Meanwhile, the former Botswana president, Ian Seretse Khama, was also barred, and Kenyan Senator Edwin Sifuna was also among those restricted from attending the Angolan opposition's event. Irked, the leader posted a letter on social media from UNITA sent to the Angolan authorities. The letter read that the Kenyan senator would arrive at Luanda's airport, along with 6 other politicians, including 2 Ukrainians. Reports suggest that Angola barred the entry of at least 24 people, including 2 former African presidents and several activists. Meanwhile, there had been no comment by the Angolan authorities as of now. However, the member of UNITA, Nelito da Costa, condemned the allegation action by the Angolan administration. Now, he said that such moves harmed the reputation of President João Lourenço. Now, he is also currently serving as the chairman of the African Union. Angola, a resource-rich nation, has been striving to present itself as a peace mediator in regional conflicts, such as the ongoing conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, earlier this week, Angola said it would attempt to broker talks between the DRC and Rwanda-backed M23 rebels in the coming days. However, the Angolan government has been accused of repression, stifling the opposition, restricting freedom of the press and protests. And the latest attempt to block world leaders from an opposition conference only further strengthens these accusations. And moving on now, Zimbabwe is witnessing a major political battle, one on succession. It's the 82-year-old President Emmerson Mnangagwa who is facing rebellion over his push for a 3rd term. The calls for him to step down come from both inside the president's ZANU-PF party and outside. Leading them is a war veteran and senior ZANU-PF member named Blessed Geza, also known as Bombshell, who launched a verbal offensive against the president. Now, Bombshell has repeatedly called on the 82-year-old leader to go or face being removed, and also accused the president of escalating corruption. The ZANU-PF party called Bombshell disloyal and described his comments against the president as treason. Now, fearing arrest or action, Bombshell went into hiding, from where, through his representatives, he continues to launch attacks on the president via social media, hinting at protests. Now, Bombshell is wanted by the police on 4 charges, including vehicle theft, undermining the authority of the president, and inciting public violence. Now, Bless Mhlanga, the journalist who first interviewed Bombshell last year, has also been arrested on charges of transmitting a message that incites violence.
Unfortunately, President Mnangagwa owns the courts. They have said they own the military, they own the police, they will do as they please. We will continue, I'm sure the lawyers will do what is right, but what we saw happening today is not fair, it is not justice, and our constitution does not support what has just taken place.
We are going to continue to engage with the authorities, as we have always been doing, to try and make sure that we create an environment that is allowing for our journalists to operate without fear and favor. This is bad for the profession, this is bad for the country, and certainly this is bad for even those that are in a leadership position.
President Mnangagwa is currently serving his 2nd and final term, which expires in 2028. Though Zimbabwe's constitution limits presidential terms to 2 5-year terms, Mnangagwa's supporters launched a campaign for a third term for the leader. They argue he needs to remain in office to complete his Agenda 2030 development program. Now, despite the president's assurance that he intended to step down in 3 years, the ZANU-PF party adopted a motion that sought to extend Mnangagwa's term until 2030. Last month, the long convoy of tanks and armoured personnel rolling through Harare sparked fears of a coup, but the government quickly allayed the public fears, saying that the tanks were in the capital as a part of a scheduled exercise. But the speculation continued to brew. Now, Bombshell's message has resulted in a purge in the ZANU-PF, and he and his allies have been expelled from the party. Other critics are also being silenced. Zimbabwe's opposition has already been weakened. Its leader, Jamson Timber, is still recovering from a 5-month stint in jail, where he spent his time on a concrete floor, sharing a cell with 80 people. He was arrested in June last year with more than 70 people for hosting an unlawful meeting at his private residence. Now, Timber's position reflects the criminalization of opposition in Zimbabwe. Even war veterans like Bombshell do not represent a united front. While Bombshell has voiced support for Vice President Constantine Chiwenga, the other veterans are still backing Mnangagwa and his 2030 agenda. While elections in Zimbabwe are still years away, a succession debate is already brewing and will possibly keep cooking. And for our final story tonight, we look at a controversy emerging from the West African nation of Sierra Leone. Its government has dismissed its chief immigration officer. The official's name is Alusine Kane. Now, he was sacked after footage emerged showing him socializing with one of Europe's most wanted criminals. The video, which surfaced through investigative reports, showed Kane at a dinner in Freetown, Sierra Leone's capital. Now, he was seen receiving a gift from the Dutch fugitive Johannes Liquedeckers. He is a drug lord sentenced in absentia for 2 years in prison. Nicknamed Chubby Jobs, he has been a central figure in Europe's narcotics trade. Dutch authorities have linked him to large-scale cocaine smuggling and money laundering. Now, reports indicate that he has been living in Sierra Leone since 2022. He has reportedly been engaging with elite circles and even attending social events with top government figures. Even though Sierra Leone has not stated the reason for sacking their chief immigration officer, the timing raises eyebrows as it came on the same day that the footage was released. In the video, the director of Sierra Leone's National Drug Law Enforcement Agency was also spotted, and his name is Andrew Jai Kaikai. Now, he was pictured observing the festivities at the same event. Now, in the days following Kane's sacking, Sierra Leone's president announced his replacement. Moses Tifabao was appointed in his place. Now, this hinted that the government is trying to distance itself from the controversy. The issue with such an incident isn't just about the dismissal of one immigration chief. The presence of a high-profile criminal within government adjacent spaces suggest lapses in law enforcement and border security. Exiled Sierra Leone's opposition figure Mohamed Mansoure has accused President Julius Maada Bio's government of sheltering the mafia. Now, Mansoure claims that Lideckers is romantically involved with Bio's daughter, Agnes Bio. Now, she too has appeared alongside him in recently surfaced images. In early February, Sierra Leone police announced a manhunt for Lideckers, but it has not provided any updates since. Last week, the Dutch Justice Minister, David van Veel, stated that he had raised the issue with his counterpart from Sierra Leone. He said that there were strong indications that he might be present in the country and warned against allowing criminals to operate freely. West Africa has long been a transit hub for cocaine trafficked from Latin America to Europe. Sierra Leone faces growing scrutiny over its role in this trade. Now, this controversy just adds another blemish to the country's image. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again at the same time on Monday. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and happy Holi.